Pittsburgh Steelers are doing it again. Another offseason, another quarterback drama, another temporary fix being sold as the long-term vision. And now, the entire future of one of the NFL's proudest franchises is basically sitting in Aaron Rodgers' hands, waiting for a text back. That's where the Steelers are right now. Not rebuilding, not contending, not developing, not evolving, just waiting. Waiting on a 42-year-old quarterback who may or may not want to play football. And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know about where this franchise mentally is right now. Because the scary part isn't that the Steelers want Aaron Rodgers. The scary part is why they want Aaron Rodgers. Because Pittsburgh has become addicted to staying respectable instead of becoming dangerous. And that mentality, that's exactly why this franchise hasn't won a playoff game in nearly a decade. See, this isn't really about Aaron Rodgers. This is about fear. Fear of losing. Fear of rebuilding. Fear of taking a step backward in order to finally take one forward. And when you really look at this situation, the Steelers are making the exact mistake that keeps NFL franchises trapped in football purgatory. Not bad enough to reset, not good enough to matter. So today, we talk about why this Aaron Rodgers waiting game doesn't just hurt the Steelers in 2026. It can hurt their entire future at the quarterback moving forward. First thing we need to address is this. What exactly are the Steelers trying to accomplish here? Seriously, what is the end game? Because if the goal is to win a Super Bowl, then nothing about this plan makes sense. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 43 years old. 43. And we have to stop talking about Rodgers like he's still the 2020 MVP Rodgers. That player is gone. The mobility isn't the same. The explosive playmaking isn't the same. The off-script magic isn't the same. Even when Rodgers played decent football last season, it still felt like the offense had a ceiling attached to it. And the numbers, they quietly back that up. The Steelers' offense still struggled to create explosive plays consistently. Rodgers still relied heavily on quick game concepts and safe throws. And when Pittsburgh faced the real contender in the playoffs, the Texans absolutely embarrassed them. 30-6 at home. That game told you everything. The Steelers weren't one quarterback away. They weren't close. They looked slow, predictable, limited, overmatched athletic. And yet somehow, their solution is to run it back with an older version of the same quarterback. That's not division. That's denial. Because deep down, the Steelers know something they don't want to admit publicly. This roster is not a championship roster. It's a respectable roster, a competitive roster, but not a Super Bowl roster. And there's a difference. And honestly, the craziest part about all of this is the Steelers even changed coaches. Mike Tomlin is gone. Now it's Mike McCarthy taking over the franchise heading into 2026. And yet somehow the philosophy still feels exactly the same. That's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. Because usually when a team hires a new head coach, it signals a new direction, a reset, a fresh vision, especially at the quarterback. But instead, the Steelers replaced Mike Tomlin with another veteran-minded coach and immediately attached him to another aging veteran quarterback. It feels less like an evolution, more like the organization trying to preserve the same identity it had for years. And look, Mike McCarthy is a respected head coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He's coached Hall of Fame quarterbacks. He understands offense. But let's be honest here. McCarthy also represents familiarity, comfort, structure. And the Steelers right now are operating like a franchise addicted to comfort. Because what would have been the bold move? Hiring a younger offensive mind, drafting a young quarterback, committing to development, building an entirely new offensive identity. That would have signaled a true new era. Instead, the Steelers feel like they're trying to recreate an older NFL formula in a conference built on speed, creativity, and quarterback mobility. There's another layer to this, too. If Mike McCarthy's first major move as the Steelers head coach is hitching himself to a 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers, what happens after Rodgers is gone? Because now you're potentially tying two timelines together. An aging quarterback timeline and a veteran head coach timeline. That's dangerous. Because if this experiment fails, you may suddenly enter the 2027 needing a franchise quarterback, an offensive identity, and a long-term coaching stability all at once. That's how franchises spiral. And honestly, this is why some Steelers fans wanted the organization to fully pull the Band-Aid off after moving on from Tomlin. Because if you're already entering a new coaching era, why not continue delaying the quarterback reset? Why not draft and develop your own guy immediately? Why not align your next head coach with your next franchise quarterback? That's what smart organizations do. The Washington Commanders did it. The Houston Texans did it. The Chicago Bears are trying to do it now. But Pittsburgh, they're trying to bridge eras instead of beginning one. And maybe that works for a year. Maybe Rodgers wins 10 games again. Maybe McCarthy stabilizes the offense. But stabilization isn't the same thing as building a championship future. That's the issue. Because eventually, franchise still has to answer the same question they've been avoiding since the late stage Ben Roethlisberger. Who is the next quarterback? Not the temporary quarterback. Not the bridge quarterback. Not the veteran placeholder. The next guy. And until Pittsburgh fully commits to answering that question, this franchise may keep repeating the exact same cycle over and over again. This is the real conversation nobody in Pittsburgh wants to have. The Steelers are terrified of pulling that Band-Aid off. Terrified. Because for years, this organization has been built on identity around stability. No losing seasons. Always competitive. Always in the hunt. And normally, that sounds great. But eventually, stability can become stagnation. And that's exactly what's happened here. The Steelers have become so obsessed with avoiding collapse that they've also avoided transformation. Think about that. Since Ben Roethlisberger declined late in his career, what has the Pittsburgh Steelers actually done to solve their quarterback position long term? Mitchell Trubisky, temporary. Russell Wilson, temporary. Justin Fields, he was an experiment. Aaron Rodgers, temporary fix again. Every move feels like the franchise is trying to avoid pain instead of chasing greatness. And eventually you pay for that mindset because the NFL is brutal at quarterback. If you don't have an elite guy, you either need to aggressively pursue one or position yourself to draft one. The Steelers have not done neither. Instead, they keep choosing the middle. And the middle is exactly where this franchise is dying, slowly. Now, this is where things get really dangerous because multiple NFL evaluators already believe that the 2027 quarterback class could be loaded. And if that happens, the Steelers may completely miss their window to finally reset the position. This is what critics like Marcus Mosher are talking about because Rodgers creates a weird problem. He's probably still good enough to win you 9 or 10 games, but not good enough to make you a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And that's the worst place you could possibly be. You're drafted too low to easily get your next franchise quarterback, while also not being good enough to truly compete with teams like Kansas City, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals. This is called football purgatory. And honestly, the Steelers are already living in it. This team has lost 7 straight playoff games. 7. That's the same for a franchise with Pittsburgh standard. And the craziest part, most of those losses didn't even feel competitive. The Steelers have been outscored 260 to 154 during that stretch. That's not bad luck. That's not one play away. That's a talent gap, a quarterback gap, an offensive ceiling gap. And Rodgers don't solve that. He just delays the inevitable conversation for another year. This is where the Steelers' contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Because every offseason we hear the same thing. We love Will Howard. Drew Allar has elite traits. This next quarterback class has potential. Okay. Then why are you scared to commit to developing one? Why keep talking about the future while continuously running back the past? That's what confuses fans. Because if the Steelers truly believe in their scouting department, then eventually they have to trust themselves enough to take that swing. And yes, it's risky. Young quarterbacks fail all the time. But you know what else fails? Being scared to try. At some point, the Pittsburgh Steelers have to decide, do they want to chase championships or chase the 9-win season? Because those two are completely different mindsets. And right now, the Steelers feel addicted to avoiding bad seasons more than pursuing greatness. And that's dangerous. Because sometimes the only way to find your next franchise quarterback is to suffer through uncertainty. The Bills went through it before Josh Allen. The Bengals went through it before Joe Burrow. The Ravens reset offensively for Lamar Jackson. Even the Chiefs took a risk moving on from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. Every great quarterback era requires courage from the organization. Pittsburgh has not shown that courage yet. And honestly, the worst part of this entire situation isn't even Rodgers himself. It's the waiting. The Steelers are one of the NFL's flagship organizations, one of the proudest franchises in sports. And yet, the entire offseason feels like they've been held hostage by a 42-year-old quarterback's indecision. That's not a great look, especially after Omar Khan publicly said he didn't expect this process to drag out like last year. And yet, here we are again. Waited through free agency, waited through the draft, waiting through OTAs, still no clarity, still no resolution. And while Pittsburgh waits, the rest of the NFL keeps moving. That's the hidden cost here, because uncertainty affects everything. Roster building, offseason chemistry, offensive installation, leadership structure. Even when younger players start operating in limbo. And for what? A quarterback who may give you marginal improvement for one season? That's the part critics are attacking. Steelers are sacrificing long-term clarity for a short-term comfort. Let's be brutally honest here. The AFC is different now. This conference is built on a young, dynamic, athletic quarterback who stresses defenses constantly. Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Allen, Stroud, Herbert. The AFC is basically an arms race at quarterback. And the Pittsburgh's response is, let's get older. That's hard to justify, especially when Rodgers physically no longer resembles the quarterback who dominated the league years ago. You can still win games with him, absolutely. But can you realistically survive 3 or 4 straight playoff matches against elite AFC quarterbacks? That's where the argument falls apart, because the Steelers aren't building toward the future of football. They're trying to survive the present, and survival mode rarely wins championships. This is the biggest issue of all. The Steelers don't seem willing to honestly evaluate themselves, because once you admit you're not truly contending, then the hard decisions have to be made. You may need to reset financially, reset philosophy, reset offensively, maybe endure a rough season. And Pittsburgh doesn't want that. So instead, they keep trying to shortcut the process. But the NFL punishes shortcuts at quarterback. You either have the guy or you spend years pretending temporary solutions are enough. Right now, The Steelers are pretending. And here's what makes this dangerous. If Rodgers comes back and Pittsburgh still exits early in the playoffs, this entire strategy is going to look awful because then the Steelers wasted another year. Another year not developing a young quarterback. Another year not positioning themselves higher in the draft. Another year delaying reality. And the NFL windows, they close fast, especially in the AFC. Meanwhile, teams around Pittsburgh continue evolving aggressively. The Ravens modernized. The Bengals found Burrow. Texas may have found Stroud. Even the Cleveland Browns are making moves. But the Steelers, they keep trying to recreate stability from the past, but the league moved forward. At some point, the Steelers have to stop being afraid of uncertainty because uncertainty is a part of finding greatness. You don't find franchise quarterbacks by constantly choosing comfort. You find them by taking risks, by committing to development, by enduring growing pains. And maybe that means living through a rough season. Maybe that means finally accepting that Ben Roethlisberger era is truly over. But what Pittsburgh is doing right now, that's not building. That's stalling. Aaron Rodgers may help the Steelers stay respectable. He may even help them win 10 games again. But does anybody honestly believe this puts the Pittsburgh Steelers on the same level as the AFC elite? Probably not. And that's the entire problem. The Steelers aren't building towards a championship future. They're trying to preserve a respectable present. And eventually, that mindset catches up to every franchise because the NFL doesn't reward teams that fear change. It rewards teams willing to evolve before absolutely having to. The Steelers haven't done that yet. And until they finally pull that Band-Aid off, this franchise may stay trapped in the exact same cycle we've been watching for years. Competitive, relevant, respected, but never truly dangerous. Honestly, that might be the hardest truth Pittsburgh has to face. So what do you guys think? Are the Pittsburgh Steelers making the right move, bringing Aaron Rodgers back? Or is Pittsburgh delaying the inevitable and hurting their future quarterback search? And if you were running the Pittsburgh Steelers, would you finally reset the franchise and chase that young quarterback? Or would you stay in status quo? Leave it in the comments below. Let me know if you guys like this video. We got more videos coming. To the next video. Peace.